Why do so many kids feel crushed under the weight of their parents' expectations? Let's walk in Hakim's shoes for a moment. Meet Hakim, a 10-year-old boy with dreams as big as the sky. But today, his heart feels heavier than his school backpack. As he steps into the alley, he sees his father, stern and tall, waiting at the entrance. The midday sun casts long shadows, echoing the tension between them. "Hakim!" his father shouts, his voice cutting through the still air. "Where is the missing money from my pocket?" Hakim's eyes widen, confusion and hurt mixing in his gaze. "I didn't take it, Baba," he whispers, but his voice is swallowed by the brick walls around them. Without another word, his father pushes him out of the house, the door closing with a finality that stings. Hakim stands alone in the narrow alley, his small frame trembling with unspoken words and unshed tears. In this moment he feels the weight of misunderstanding crushing him. But Hakim's journey is just beginning, and with every step he takes, there's a story waiting to unfold.
Hakim, a wisp of a boy at 10, possessed eyes that mirrored the turquoise domes scattered across Isfahan's skyline. His eyes, wide and curious, seemed to hold the secrets of the ancient city within them. They shone with an innocence that belied the harsh realities of his world, a world where the lines between dreams and survival often blurred. His laughter, like the tinkling of wind chimes in a gentle breeze, often echoed through the labyrinthine alleys of their ancient neighborhood. It was a sound that brought a fleeting sense of joy to those who heard it. His days were spent amidst the intoxicating aroma of saffron and cardamom, the scents mingling in the air like an exotic perfume, the rhythmic hammering of coppersmiths, their tools creating a symphony of metallic beats that resonated through the market, and the vibrant hues of carpets laid out like tapestries under the scorching sun, each one telling a story of its own. Hakim, a child of the bazaar, navigated its bustling heart with the agility of a seasoned merchant, his small frame darting through the crowd with ease, his small hands deftly weaving through the throngs of people, picking up on the rhythms and flows of the market. Yet beneath the surface of his carefree spirit, a current of unease had begun to stir, a sense of foreboding that he couldn't quite shake off. A premonition of the storm that was about to shatter his world, casting a shadow over the innocence that had once defined him. The familiar cacophony of the marketplace faded into a distant hum as Hakim stood trembling before his father. Gone was the comforting aroma of spices, replaced by the acrid scent of his father's anger.
"Money is missing. Hakim, you are the culprit."
His father's voice, usually deep and resonant like the call to prayer, was now sharp, accusatory. Denials died on Hakim's lips, choked by the fear that constricted his throat. His father, his face a mask of bitter disappointment, uttered the words that would forever cleave Hakim's life in two.
"Get out! Don't come back until you've learned your lesson."
The world tilted on its axis. Hakim was cast out, adrift in a sea of uncertainty and fear. The alleyways, once familiar and comforting, now loomed over Hakim, their shadows stretching like grasping claws. Each turn seemed to lead him further into a suffocating maze of crumbling brick and despair. The sun, a merciless eye in the sky, beat down on him, amplifying his thirst and hunger. Tears, hot and stinging, streamed down his face, leaving dirty tracks on his dust-caked cheeks. The world, once vibrant and alive, had transformed into a bleak and unforgiving landscape. Loneliness, a suffocating shroud, enveloped him, whispering insidious doubts and fears into his young heart. A group of boys, their faces hardened masks of indifference and bravado, emerged from the shadows. Their presence was intimidating, a silent declaration of their dominance over the dark alley. They were older, their eyes holding a wisdom that spoke of experiences far beyond their years. Each glance they exchanged carried unspoken stories of survival and hardship. They offered Hakim a sense of belonging, a refuge from the storm raging within him. In their company, he found a temporary escape from his inner turmoil.
"Hey kid, come join us. You look like you could use a break. We've got what you need."
Their laughter, harsh and grating, filled the air as they introduced him to a world of fleeting oblivion. It was a sound that promised both camaraderie and danger. A puff, a cough, A dizzying sense of detachment, the smoke curled around him, a physical manifestation of his growing disconnection from reality. The world blurred at the edges, the pain receding into a dull ache. His senses dulled, and for a moment the weight of his troubles seemed to lift.
Here, take this. It'll make you feel better. Trust me, it's what you need right now.
For a brief moment, Hakim felt a sense of belonging, a dangerous illusion that masked the insidious grip of addiction taking hold. The fleeting smile on his face was a testament to the deceptive comfort he found.
Thanks, I guess. His voice wavered, betraying his uncertainty and the conflict within.
And so the cruel embrace tightened around him, pulling him deeper into a world he was not prepared to face. The shadows seemed to close in, sealing his fate in their cold, unyielding grip. Hunger gnawed at Hakim's insides, a constant, insistent companion that never left his side, day or night. The once bright eyes, now clouded and wary, scanned the bustling marketplace, searching for an opportunity to ease his relentless hunger. His hands, once used to trade trinkets and sweets, now trembled with desperation as they reached out, nimble fingers pilfering bread from an unsuspecting vendor, hoping not to get caught.
Hey, what do you think you're doing, boy? You can't just take that.
Survival became his sole purpose, his every action driven by the need to find food, each sunrise a reminder of the brutal struggle to exist in a world that seemed to have forgotten him. School, once a beacon of hope and opportunity, a place where dreams were nurtured, faded into a distant memory, overshadowed by the harsh realities of his daily life.
I'm sorry, I just needed something to eat. Please understand.
The weight of his circumstances pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating, making it hard to breathe, snuffing out the last embers of his childhood innocence. The abyss, it seemed, had gazed back into his soul, and Hakim, lost and broken, had become a reflection of its despair, a shadow of the boy he once was.
Eight years had passed since Hakim last saw his childhood home. 8 years of drifting from one town to the next. He moved from one menial job to another. Each one offered little comfort and no sense of belonging. The harsh desert winds had become his only companion. They whispered stories of his past, stories etched with regret and longing. Hakim tried to silence them. He buried himself in work, but the memories always lingered, a constant ache in his chest. The faces of his family haunted his dreams. His father, a figure of stern disapproval. His brothers, their eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disappointment. And then there was Layla, her image a fleeting whisper of what could have been. He pushed these thoughts away, clinging to the hope that time would dull the pain. But the wound in his heart remained, a constant reminder of his exile. He found work at a dusty grocery store, owned by a distant uncle. The days were long and monotonous, filled with the stacking of shelves and the murmur of bartering customers. But there was a strange comfort in the routine. It was a welcome change from the uncertainty of the road. The familiar sense of spices and grains filled his senses. They offered a faint echo of his childhood home. He rented a small, windowless room above the store. It was cramped and bare, but it was his. For the first time in years, he had a place to call his own. He ate his meals alone, a simple fare of bread and lentil soup. There was a quiet solitude in these moments. It was a stark contrast to the noisy chaos of his former life. One day, his younger brother, Reza, arrived at the store. The sight of him brought back a rush of emotions. Shame, longing, fear. Reza avoided Hakim's gaze, his voice cold and distant as he spoke of their father's failing health. Hakim listened, his heart pounding in his chest. He yearned to reach out, to bridge the chasm that separated them. But years of resentment and unspoken words hung heavy in the air. Reza left as abruptly as he had arrived. The weight of his news settled over Hakim like a shroud. His father was dying. The thought sent a shiver down his spine, a mix of dread and a strange, unfamiliar ache. For years, he had tried to erase his father from his thoughts. Now, the thought of facing him filled him with a terror he could barely comprehend. Hakim struggled with the decision. Should he return? The years of bitterness and anger warred with a sense of filial duty he could not ignore. Sleep offered no escape, only a relentless replay of past transgressions and missed opportunities. The lines on his face seemed to deepen overnight, etched by the turmoil within. Finally, he knew what he had to do. He packed a small bag, his movements mechanical, his heart heavy with apprehension. As he boarded the bus, the desert scenery blurred into a canvas of muted colors. It mirrored the storm of emotions raging within him. He was journeying not just across miles, but through years of pain and resentment. The hospital was a sterile, white building that smelled of disinfectant and despair. His brother's face, when he saw Hakim, was unreadable. He led Hakim to the bedside, his silence speaking volumes. And there he was, his father, lying shrunken and frail on the bed. The once imposing figure who had ruled their household with an iron fist was now reduced to a shadow of his former self. Hakim stared at the withered hand on the bedspread, at the network of wrinkles etched on his father's face. Was this the man who had banished him? The man he had feared for so long? In his father's weakened state, Hakim saw something he had never allowed himself to acknowledge before. Vulnerability. It was a sight that chipped away at the wall of anger he had built around his heart. Days turned into nights as Hakim stayed by his father's bedside. He spoke softly of insignificant things, his voice a low rumble in the sterile silence. He helped the nurses, his movements clumsy yet gentle. With each passing hour, the years of estrangement seemed to melt away, replaced by a shared silence that was both awkward and strangely comforting. One evening, as twilight painted the hospital room in shades of gray, Hakim finally found his voice. The words tumbled out, a torrent of regret and longing, a plea for forgiveness for the pain he had caused. Tears streamed down his face, a release he had denied himself for far too long. His father lay still, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. Hakim wasn't sure if his father had even heard him, but in that moment of raw vulnerability, he found a measure of peace he hadn't thought possible. His father's hand twitched in his. Slowly, his eyes opened, clouding with the effort. Hakim held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. A weak smile touched his father's lips. "Hakim," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "My son." And in that single utterance, forgiveness was granted. A lifetime of unspoken emotions exchanged in a heartbeat. Hakim wept, the years of pain and separation washing over him. He had finally come home. His father passed away peacefully a few days later. Hakim was there, holding his hand, whispering words of comfort and love. As he closed his father's eyes for the last time, he felt a strange sense of completion. His father was gone, but the forgiveness he had received was a gift he would carry with him always. The funeral was a blur of somber faces and hushed condolences. Hakim stood beside his brothers, the years of estrangement seemingly forgotten in the face of their shared loss. As they lowered his father's coffin into the ground, Hakim felt a profound sense of sadness. But it was a sadness tinged with a strange sense of peace. He had come seeking forgiveness, and he had found it. He had faced his demons and emerged, not unscathed, but stronger. The years of hardship and loneliness had changed him. They had stripped him bare, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions. But they had also forged within him a resilience he never knew he possessed. As he stood there, the scent of freshly turned earth filling his nostrils, Hakim knew that his journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long and arduous. But he was no longer the lost and angry young man who had fled his home all those years ago. He was a man reborn, tempered by hardship and humbled by forgiveness. He took a deep breath, the desert air filling his lungs with the promise of a new beginning. He had a long way to go, but he was finally heading home.